This week, let's finish up our exterior elevations so that we can get all of our windows and curtain walls in where we want them. And we'll add some grids. So the first thing we'll do is we have this level 1 plan. Let's right click and on the project browser, right click and duplicate. And then just duplicate, not with detailing, because we don't need those dimensions. Those were just for us kind of setting it up. So we'll hit duplicate. We've got a new plan. And then we're going to change the name. So if you hit F2 or right click and rename, let's call it, in all caps, let's call it level 1 floor plan. This is the plan that we'll put on a sheet. So after you've duplicated that, let's go up to our grids. So it's an architecture tab, and all the way on the right, there'll be grids. Grids will be typically centered on the columns in this kind of construction. So we can actually just pick out here anywhere, a little ways away from our building, and then drag down. You notice there's only a grid on the one side. So if you select the grid on the properties panel, go to edit type. And then where it says plan view symbols, kind of towards the bottom, N1 and N2, that just shows you, if you hover over it, it'll kind of give you a little view of what it does. And you can check that so that we have them both on both sides of the grid. Okay, so now we have a grid bubble on both sides. And we'll go up to our modify tab, select the line or AL, and zoom in to your column, and then you grab the center of that column, pick that first, and then select the grid. You can hit escape, and we don't need to go back to grids. We can actually just copy this grid over, and it will rename it automatically. So select the grid, go to copy or type CO, and make sure and select multiple so that we can do this multiple times, so we don't have to hit copy each time. Then zoom in onto this grid and then grab the center of the grid and pick and drag it over. And then we're going to, if you hold down shift, it'll kind of lock the orthogonal so that you can not have to worry about moving the grid to be a different height than this other grid. So if you hold down shift, pick the center of the next grid, you can zoom out with the mouse wheel, and then select the next grid, zoom out, and you can hold down the middle mouse wheel button to pan, and just go along and add these grids at the center line of all your columns. And we're going to do the same thing in the other direction as well. So the numbered grids will be along the top, and when we do the horizontal grids, they will be letter grids. So there we go. We have 1 through 9 grids. They're all locked, so if I were to move them, they will move together. And now we can go back to the architecture tab, select grid again, and we do the same thing. We'll click out here a ways and drag all the way across our building. Hold the shift to make it orthogonal. And before we start copying, let's change this grid to A. So to change the grid number, you can either change it on the properties palette over here under name, or select the grid, and you can actually click on the letter or number and be able to edit it. And we'll do the same thing. Modify tab, go to align, and then we can select the center of the grid in this direction and the horizontal direction, and then align this grid. All right, so now we pick this A grid and we go to copy again. Multiple should still be selected or checked, and we can do the same thing. Grab the center of this column and copy these grids down, holding shift to make it so that we can't change the XY position so that they all stay aligned. All right, and then after we do that, let's go ahead and left click and drag and select all of these grids. And to select additional grids, we can hold down Control and window over the other grids, and then let's pin them. This is so we can't inadvertently move them. Okay. So now we have our grids pinned, we have our grids centered on our columns. And now let's go ahead and add some additional curtain walls here. So we can go to the Architecture tab, select Wall, and then on the Properties palette, we can change which wall it is. So you can scroll down to the bottom, all the way down to Storefront. And let's pick out here so we can move the wall, move our curtain wall into our wall. Let's make this let's go ahead and make this 19'4". So if you pick and drag in any direction, you can just start typing and it'll enter in the dimension you want. Now we've got a 19'4" wide window. Let's select, so like now we've drawn this window, if you select the dashed line, so if you hover over the curtain wall, you potentially could get some mullions or even the glazing, but you're going to want to hover over it slowly until you get that dashed line. That's the actual wall. Go ahead and hit the space bar once you've selected it, and it pushes this glazing to the exterior of the wall panel. So now we can move. You can type MV or come up here to the top and hit move. We'll take the center of this curtain wall we just drew and we'll place it centered on our 6-inch stud wall. I'm going to open up this bottom elevation, which should be now your west elevation. I think initially this was the south. But I can't remember actually when we rotated our project. Just make sure that now our building has been rotated. So if we go to your 3D view, for instance, you can see up here in the view cube, since we rotated it counterclockwise 90 degrees, west is on the bottom of our building here. So this would be our west elevation down here now. I mean, it was always before, but initially the way we had it set up, when we rotated it, I don't remember if these rotated with it, but it doesn't matter. Just make sure this is the west one, and you can open this by double clicking it, or you can come over here to your project browser, right click, and open. Now to open it by double clicking on it, you have to select this arrow out front and not the actual bubble. I'm not sure that, I don't know, it doesn't appear that it works, but if you're by double clicking on the bubble by itself, but if you click on the arrow, it'll work. So now you can see we've got our curtain wall in here, and let us make these curtain walls. I want them to stop below this soldier course brick. So we can hit tab to get the curtain wall, and we can drag it down to be aligned. The top of this curtain wall will be aligned with level 2, and that puts it right at the bottom of the brick. And as we're going, as we're going through and doing this, we can be checking our brick coursing to make sure that our masonry coursing, that it's staying the same. And we'll want to make sure that our brick coursing is keeping its alignment, so that we can make sure our windows are within a brick modular or masonry modular dimensions. I'm going to grab this curtain wall. What I did is just hovered over it, and I hit tab a couple times until I can see the outline. As you can see the outline of the curtain wall, and then you can pick it. Then you can type MV for move. Or is it MV? Yeah, it should be MV. And we can move this over so that it's lined up. And I think what we want is 8 inches for the CMU offset here from that curtain wall, and then 8 inches or 4 inches for the brick for that first course. And as you're going through, you'll want to make sure and adjust your brick pattern. So you can see I added the curtain wall, and I kind of adjusted the little reveal, the little brick that was set back. So you can just align and get that set back correctly. And then for our next window, let's make it 7'4". So we can actually just highlight this one in the elevation, hit copy, oops, not rotate, copy, and copy this over. And then you see a little temporary dimension. We can just pick into there and hit 7'4". And again, we'll want to make this a brick modular dimensioning. So let's move this window so we can maintain that modular setting. And so the way I have it right now, so I'm going to close the 3D view. I'm going to go to level 1. I'm going to go to view, tile views, so we can have our plan open at the same time. I'm going to pick from this wall on grid 6 and come over to the face of this window. And I'm actually going to undo that dimension. So if you throw a dimension on and you pick a dimension and you're like, oops, I didn't want to pick that. If you just pick back on the same spot, it'll remove that dimension. But what I want to do is get this yellow or this this dashed line for the curtain wall so that this dimension is associated to that curtain wall. So if I were to select in plan view or elevation, that dashed line, I can now adjust that window. It's actually showing me that window. And so if I were to select this and change the dimension, it's actually going to move that window. So to restart the string, so you just select the dimension. Up top in the Modify tab, it'll come up with this Edit Witness line. If you pick that, it'll allow you to go right back into the dimension command, so it'll be tied into this dimension. Because you don't really want separate strings. You're going to want to keep your dimensions in one string if possible. And we'll finish at the end of this bump out. And good practice is usually going to the grid lines, but we'll just keep we'll just dimension to these windows for right now. So now we've got these windows dimensions. We'll check our elevation and zoom in. It looks like this one's off when we added, and so we'll just align and get our reveal aligned all back up again. Alrighty. And so I'm going to copy this smaller window over. I'll copy it over 3'4". Actually, that won't. Yeah, that's not going to work because that'll be 3'4" from this side. Let's just highlight it, select it, and move it over. And then we can adjust it afterwards. So on our plan, looks like we got 2 foot 5 3/8 to keep our modular from that grid. And it looks like we have 10 foot and a 16th. Now these columns are not centered, they're just spaced equally. So I think once we get our windows in, we could probably go to our structural model. In the real world, or whatever you want to call it, you would, you'd contact the engineer and say, hey, please center these columns on our windows so that, it looks more symmetrical. It makes the interior look good, because we won't want to leave these columns just open. We'll want to add furring walls, which just means a wall that they put in front of that so it hides the column. And so I'm going to go back here and select this little string of dimensions. I'm going to edit the witness line, and I'm going to continue and keep selecting there so I can get this other window. So now, if we select this wall, let's make this 3'4" because that would be a modular masonry modular setting, so that we should have let's see, 4'8", 3'4". Let's take a look at our elevation to make sure we're staying within that modular setting. Our brick looks like, we have 8 inches from our CMU coursing to the curtain walls. It looks like we do. And we'll fix this revealed course up here. And let me see here. Just going to take a couple dimensions. Typically, I like to keep things symmetrical if possible. I'm actually going to select both of these windows here. So select the dashed line, not the actual mullions. And I'm going to come up here to the top. I have both these curtain walls selected. I should say curtain wall 2 on the properties palette. And I'm going to activate dimensions. I'm going to push this over 2 feet. I think it'll look better on the elevations. So I'm going to call that 2'8". Oops, I'm sorry, 6'8", because we want to move it 2 feet, not change it to 2 feet. And we can kind of see how that looks. I'm going to activate dimensions again, and I'm going to change this 3'4". Let's try 4'4". Oops, it actually, let's try to move just this one to 4'4". Let's make that 4'8". And what you can see I'm doing is just trying to find, I'm gonna delete all these dimensions just so kind of clean up my view. I'm gonna select a dimension, select all instances visible in this elevation view, and delete, so I can see a little bit easier how my brick is lining up. And so what I'm looking at is just visually how this looks. the spacing between here. Should we make these spacings equal? So this would be over here like 4'8", 4'8", and then 2 foot, so that it's a, you know, a typical dimension. Or should we, basically how this looks visually. Normally an architect would do this, but you might have to do this as a drafter in a small architecture firm. They might lay it out and expect you to go through and clean it up. So they might say, this is the kind of windows I want. And then you'd go in here and you'd kind of make them fit in a modular setting, because they might not be too concerned. They might have the idea that they want everything to be modular, but they'll want you to come in and actually make it work out. So they want a building kind of like we did in the beginning. We set out a footprint that's 100 by 2. What do we do? 100 by 200. But then as a drafter, you'd come in and then fix it so that it actually works in a modular setting. So the brick is easier to lay, and then you do the same thing with the windows. Adjust them so that they're in a nice, even setting. So now we've got these windows. I think what we could do we could actually add 8 inches here. So that these two spaces are the same. So we were coming over 2 feet, got 7'4", 4'8", 8 foot. And then our window, but let's make this 7'4" again. We'll make this 4'8". We'll select this window and make that 4'8". So now we have equal spaces between these windows at these 2 locations. Our brick appears to be lined up. Yeah, I like it. So we'll do that. So if you're working with me there, what we did was just we kind of got our windows in. We kind of got a spacing that worked modularly. This 19 4-foot window, some 2 7'4" windows. And what we can do now is we have all of these set up the way we like them. We can't put a window here per se because there's this brace in the back. But what we might want to do is let's open up our 3D view. If your 3D view is big like this, or if you have one already set up, like I do, you can just go to that view. If you select this wall that is on here, you can see that we added these braces across here. And I think what we could do is we would ask the structural engineer to make 2 diagonal braces, maybe that don't go all the way across, so that we could then fit another window in here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll just add a window in there. Let's start by just selecting the 7'4" window, and we'll copy it over here. And let's make this a bit wider. Let's make it 10'4". And I'm going to add another string of dimensions here so I'm going to make this 4'8" as well. I'm going to edit witness line, but after selecting the dimension, make sure I grab that window And then I'll select the window over here. And then we can make this 4'8" like the others. And let me see here. Actually, I think 4'8" will be too small. So let's increase this. And let's just censor this window between in this distance here. So what I'm doing is just let's just make this a 10-foot window and make this 7'4" on both sides. And I think that'll give us enough room, or the engineer to get enough room to maybe put a brace here behind this window. Actually, as I'm thinking about it, let's put this window back to 7'4", because I'm trying to think as oops, I hit my num lock. Just to give them enough room to get a diagonal brace here, and then another one here. Let's go back to our west elevation and make sure our brick modular is still, looks like it's still working. Yeah, I like it. So the other thing you might be asking yourself is, what are you going to do here? We have our window, but you can see that you would actually see the beam beyond. But we still want the tall windows, so what we can do here is I'm just going to select this curtain wall, and I'm going to edit, type. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to the horizontal grid. That's the mullion that's over here. We're going to change it from 10 foot to 9 foot and hit apply, which should move this horizontal grid and this mullion down so that you can see now. Let's go to our west elevation. And if you were to select the curtain wall, let's see. We can't see through the curtain walls. You can in the elevation view, so let's just go back to the elevation. And let's select this curtain wall and then hit the front view. And you can see now, you can kind of see the beam beyond, and now our curtain wall mullion is now below that. Okay. And so what we'll need to do is then change this tall one. So this tall one is actually just going to go fixed up to 9 feet or whatever it was and keep going. But as you can see, it's not going to do a spacing that we need to cover up the floor line, unless we did like 3 separate curtain walls, which we could, but we can actually just take this curtain wall and then move the mullions manually. So we got these ones set. We'll select this curtain wall. And what we'll want to do, so if you zoom in on this curtain wall, if you hover over this mullion here, you kind of see, Here, I'll change it to hidden line so you can see a little bit better without all the shading. You can hover over the mullion. If you hit tab, you can kind of see that light blue line, that little dashed line. Okay, you can see that it's 9 foot, 9 foot, and it'll go all the way up. But what we want to do is we want to make this spacing to be 3 foot above this 9 foot, because that's what happens here. So it'll be at the floor line. So if we have a 12-foot floor height, we'll want a mullion at 9 feet to match our other ones, and then we'll want another mullion at the floor line so that we can cover up our beams so you can't see them from outside. And what will actually happen is we'll leave this glass, but we'll change it to a opaque glass, or like a spandrel glass that has a tint to it, so basically you can't see behind it. And if you notice, a lot of buildings, they'll do that. So if you grab that line, so we've grabbed this dashed line, you can kind of see the line over here on the right. And if you leave it there, it should have the little curtain wall grid line pop up. And then you'll want to pick it and then uncheck this locking. And then you'll change this to 3 feet. And it'll put that grid. Change that to 3 feet, sorry. And don't lock it again because it puts it back to where it was originally. And then now we've got an added mullion. Now to get the rest of them into the right locations, let's go to our architecture tab. And we're going to go to kind of a third way over from the left. There's under the build curtain grid, we're going to add a curtain grid. So if you select that, it'll allow us to add a grid. So if you hover over on the side, you can kind of see, it'll give you some temporary dimensions so you can kind of adjust it to where we need. We'd want 9 feet above from this bottom one. And so you kind of move your mouse until you get it to 9 feet. It'll add another grid. And then here, add another grid line. So then we've added a grid, and then we'll want to select this one that it automatically made. Unpin it. Type in 3 for 3 feet. And then we'll do that again here. So we've got this other grid up here. So the top one. Just hit tab. And it's 12 feet above. We're going to unpin it. Make that 9 feet. And then we'll select this last grid that it put at the top. Unpin it. And make that 3 feet. So the next thing we'll do, let's load in a panel family. So come to the Insert tab. Got over to the right. On the middle of your window should be Load Family. It should bring you up to your English Imperial family library. And we'll go to Curtain Wall Panels. Let's see. Oh, I think that there's a lot already loaded. Let's check this out. So let's check these. Let's get these panels that are at this level 1. So if you hover over, you might need to tab, hold Control to select the panels. And then now you'll unpin these. You can you can come up to the Modify tab where it says Modify, and then you can actually pin them all or unpin them in one time instead of having to unpin each one And then let's go, so we'll unpin them using this unpin button here at the top, so we don't have to do them individually. And we can select the system panel glazed. And let's scroll up and see if we've got some more options for our panel. So let's select solid. And then we'll edit type. And let's change the default material. Actually, yeah, we'll go to the materials and default. And let's type in glazing. And what we're looking for, I'm just looking for something that's going to be just a solid color. So I'm going to add this glass bronze glazing, I think. Yeah, it's not this glass bronze glazing, the one you can see here with the where it's showing the windows. So you select that one and then choose a little arrow to add the material. So you can select the appearance and you can see the what it'll look like. And then over here for shading, let's give it a surface pattern solid. And then let's just give it this a light gray. And same thing with the cut pattern. And I'm going to change this color for the 3D to be that same light gray. And let's check it out, see how it looks. So now our solid is this glass bronze glazing. And we can hit OK. And now it has changed to the solid panel. So if we go to our realistic view, in our 3D view, we can go down to realistic and check out to see what it looks like. And so it still isn't opaque on here, so let's edit the type. Go back to our glazing bronze. Go to our appearance. This is what we want. I'm going to hit cancel before I change that. So go to appearance and tint. We'll have it do a tint and that light gray. Hit apply to see. This should change to that tint. Still not. It's still not showing as solid as I want. So I'm going to just adjust some of these settings. And so that's closer to what we want. So our elevation, it's showing that solid. And then here, it's still a little bit transparent. So let's go up here and mess with these settings a bit. So we'll edit type again. Select this bronze glazing. Oh, and maybe because I have the transparency on. Oop, no, that was transparent all the way up. Edit type again. I'm going to try something different here. Not getting quite the uh, what I want to get here. Let's just do a new material, create new material. Let's rename this to spandrel glazing. And let's make this a solid pattern. Light gray again, solid pattern for the cut. And a light gray. And over here on the appearance, let's make this 0%. There we go. That's more like it. So let's do that over again just to make sure you guys are following, since I was kind of messing around with trying to use a default color. Often I'll just end up making my own anyway. So what I did was I came in here and selected this panel, and I edit type, went to spandrel glazing, or I'm sorry, went to material. I made a new material and called it spandrel glazing. Actually, which I'm going to rename right now to glazing dash spandrel, which will located up here. Oh, actually, I want it to be glass. That's what they call it actually. Glass spandrel. I changed all these values to the 192. I made the foreground and the cut solid with the 192 hatch. And then the appearance for transparency, I made it, or did I? Oh man, I can't even remember what I did. Oh, I think I just didn't check transparency so that it wouldn't. So like if I were to select transparency, it would make it somewhat transparent. So if I hit apply, make it transparent, but I don't want that. I want it to be solid so you can't see through it. But if you just don't check the transparency, you don't have to worry about doing that. And then it'll make this solid panel. And so I think the last thing we'll want to do is come in here and select all of these. Just hit tab and hold control to add to your selection. Grab these panels. Unpin them up here at the top. Change them to solid. Oh, that was weird. That was just a little glitch. It looked like they weren't. And we'll do the same thing up here. And you can tell if you've got something else selected if up here it says multiple. So if I were to select this mullion as well, it'll say multiple categories. So you can hold shift to deselect and control to select. If you happen to get something else in here and you can't figure out what it is or you can't deselect it, if you go to your filter, you just uncheck what you don't want. So we don't want curtain wall mullions. We just want the curtain panels. And then here you go. Unpin. Change these to solid. And then we're good to go. And it looks like a little bit of graphic issues with this not regenerating. And then now we've got these panels here. So I just changed this from realistic to shaded. And then we want to do this here too. So we can select all these curtain panels. Unpin them by hitting this unpin on the modify tab. Change these to solid. Yep, I forgot this last little window here. Let's do that. Unpin, change to solid. All right. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll add these windows to these other levels. But first, what I want to do is I'm going to select these two windows here on the right here. I'm going to select them in the 3D view, or you can select them in the plan view. Make sure you just have the two curtain walls. I'm going to find the modify tab, and then the mirror by drawing an axis. And I'll pick this outside corner here, and then I'm going to mirror them at a 135-degree angle, or 45. So that I can get these windows mirrored over here. And then they should still be selected, and let's mirror them to the opposite side here. So mirror, we can actually use this grid, should be the center of our building. And now we've got our windows on this other side here. And let's add a couple more windows because everybody loves windows. So I'm going to select this window here. I'm going to hit copy. Oops. Copy, not rotate. Let's just move this up to be kind of centered in this wall between the braces. And so let's make this window a little bit wider at 8 feet. And I'm going to throw string and dimensions on here just to kind of see where we're at. And we'll check out our south elevation. Remember to select the window, curtain wall window, instead of by getting the little dashed line instead of the wall. So that allows us to move our window using our dimensions. Alrighty. So I'm going to make this dimension here. Let's see. First, I got to make this dimension actually go to the curtain wall if it's not already. So if you don't want to redo the dimensions, you can see here, you can grab this second little node that's closest to the dimension line. If you grab that, you can drag your dimension, and you can actually associate it to the curtain wall instead of the wall. So you can see it's not changing because it's actually dimensioning the same location. But now if I select the window, I can actually change these dimensions. And I'm going to copy this 8-foot window over again to be somewhat centered over here. We'll change it later once we get our dimensions on it. So select the string, edit witness line. And now we can go about changing our windows. Looks like we're 2'8", 7'4" from the ends, and then we got 9'4", and so we just need to move this one over 4 inches. Oops, not 4. I'll not change it to 4, but we'll make this 9'4". So now we've got these windows dimensioned evenly across here. And I think again too, we'll adjust this brace frame in the structural model so that it's back here further, so we can keep our windows. And let's go to our elevation here to check it out. Make sure we're keeping our elevation into a modular setting. I'm going to close these other ones out so we can look at it a little bit easier, the full screen. So I'm just checking to make sure we've got this 8-inch spacing so that our brick is staying nice and lined up, and it'll be easy for a mason to come in here and lay this out. And it does look like, based on the spacing that we did, our windows are lined up nicely. So let's go to the plan view. I close that elevation view, and I'm going to select all of these curtain walls just by windowing over them. Hold Control to select all of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to do the filter. Check none. Filters in the Modify tab when you have something selected, and just select walls. Okay, and then I'm going to go up to you could either go up here to copy to clipboard, or hit Control C, and then paste the selected levels. And we're just going to do level 2. Now we can open up our 3D view again and check out our windows. Now these windows up top, we want to change the dimensions a little bit. So I'm just going to go through and select them all. It may be harder for you to do that. For me, it's gotten a little bit easier to kind of select things. I move my mouse slow enough, I kind of know where elements want to be selected from, for lack of a better term. So like if I'm going to select this window, I'm going to go to the edge of the window to get the actual curtain wall. If I'm going to select the wall, you gotta hover over the edges of things to get them to select. So I'm holding Control down and just moving my mouse slowly until I see it highlight and then picking it. So what I'm going to do with these windows is, now I've got them all selected, I'm just going to give it a 3-foot offset from the bottom. So over in the Properties palette, I'm giving it 3 feet level offset, and then I'm going to also, let's give it a -1 foot offset from the top. Yeah, I think I like the 3 foot and -1. That gives us a 8-foot tall window in the building here. With a little ledge. Before I do anything else, what I'm going to do is, got all these windows selected already. So I'm going to edit their type, and I'm going to duplicate. And I'm going to just storefront, and I'm going to say L2 to L4. So what I'm doing is I'm duplicating this window. I'm going to call it level 2 to level 4. And then I'm going to change the fixed distance. So if we had a 9 feet, there's a fixed distance from the bottom of the window, and we have moved it up the bottom of the window 3 feet, so now we don't have that horizontal mullion. We'll need to change this to 6 feet to accommodate for that 3-foot base offset that we gave it. Okay, so just hit 6 feet, hit OK, and so then now we've got our mullion back, and it should line up if we go to our west elevation. We should see that this does line up with our adjacent mullion. And so on these, we don't want it to go full height, similar, to like these. So we're just gonna leave it as it were, leave the windows so that there's going to be some room here. There's going to be framing in between the windows above. Okay, so let's go back to our 3D view, and we'll do the same thing where we select these panels by hitting Tab. Unpin this side, change them to solid, and then we'll come back and do this side here. I prefer to do this on 3D view. I like to be able to not have to open a bunch of views. I like to model in the 3D view. It seems easier for me, But if you want, you can open up this south elevation or each elevation if it's easier for you to select. And I would encourage you to try to find whatever's quickest and more efficient. Just don't always do it necessarily in the same view that I do. I'm going to do it the way I find it easier for me. You can see I had to like kind of zoom in to try to get this one a little bit easier, and I accidentally selected the mullion, so I just hit shift to and shift and select to deselect it. Okay, got all these window mullions. I'm going to unpin, change them to solid. And then what I'm going to do here is then come back around and copy these up. And actually, before I copy these up, no, we'll copy these up first. I'm always trying to think of ways of doing things so that you can do it at one time. So we don't want to have to like add all the other windows and then change all the panels for each set. So we can do it once here, and then we can mirror and copy when they're already done instead of having to do them for each instance. Now drafting, I mean, there's going to be times where that's going to happen, but for this, we can try to do, where you have to go through and manually change something. But so here we go. We have all these windows. I'm going to hit Control C, come up here to paste and paste align to selected levels. And I'm going to do 3 and 4 and hit OK. Now we've got our windows all the way up the building. And it's starting to look like an office building. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to window over all of these curtain walls. Actually, I'm going to hit escape before I do that because we actually got the interior walls of the stairs. So let's just do this a little bit more carefully. So we'll just come over here, select all those windows or curtain walls, and we'll do the same thing over here. Hold the control button down. You can see it adds the little plus to the cursor. Select these. I almost always filter, check none, and just select walls. And now we can mirror. Oops. Except I don't want to mirror on both of these. I mean, I potentially could mirror across the diagonal, but that's too risky. I'm just gonna mirror these windows here to the back side, and then we'll mirror all these windows to the opposite side. Grab that filter, check none, walls. Okay, I'll go to my plan view. I can actually mirror by picking an axis. Pick this center grid. Mirrored all these windows over here. I'm going to select previous. So I'm going to get these. Let's see, what windows did it pick? Yeah, we want to select previous. But we'll just come up here to the top. Now we can select all these windows. Kind of pan around here. And select these windows here. Let's go to level 1 floor plan. I'm going to filter, check none, and just do the walls. I'm going to mirror off the center line of this grid here. Oops, and I typed mm to mirror along an axis. Now if we go back to our 3D view, I'm going to change it to hidden, so I think it runs a little bit faster than having to like render. And so now we've mirrored all of our mirrors throughout the rest of the building. They've already got the spandrel. And actually one thing that I wanted to do here is where we have this column in the front, let's select these and unpin them and change this to solid. We'll put a wall there so to hide that column, and you won't be able to see that column. Alrighty. So I think let's go to this back elevation and finish up our windows. And this back elevation, you can look up here. If you're confused about what elevation you're looking at, it also says your east. Now, if you've named it correctly, then you know you can grab the east elevation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these windows here. Hitting tab to get all of them. Here, let me see. Nope, that's going to select the stair beyond. Here, this is why I like to do it in a 3D view. For me, it's just easier to see in the 3D view. I'm going to hold Control to select multiple windows. Now we can go to our east elevation. And let's copy from grid 8 to grid 6. And then again to grid 5. And so now we've kind of got these windows here in the center now. Let's take a look at our 3D view to see what that looks like, to see if we've got any conflicts with columns and beams that we'll have to account for. And so, yeah, we still have that one conflict, but when we change the the orientation of this beam, we'll have that beam stops. And actually, it may be better to shift these windows over slightly so that they're more centered on this space. I guess maybe not centered. Let me look at the elevation here. So if I look at my east elevation, before we go too far, let's adjust the brick if necessary. Looks like it liked everything we did. Still working in a modular setting. That looks a little bit less than 8, but just throw a dimension on there. So yeah, for these windows, we'll need to adjust these so that they're As you can see, I'm just grabbing these windows and then adjusting them so that they're falling correctly in the brick coursing, brick and CMU coursing. So I think we want to go to this far one. And I'm throwing these on just to make sure. All right, that looks good. So now we have all of these. I'm going to adjust this section box to move up a little bit, because I think what we need to do is give a little bit more room here at the top. So the last thing, select our top parapet, and let's change that to 55 feet. I'm going to move it up 5 feet, just to give it a little bit, yeah, a lot more space up here. It does kind of throw off our equal kind of soffit that we made out of the windows, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. All right, so now we've got windows around our entire building, and it's starting to look more like I would think kind of a typical office building. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions, and send me an email, or we can do a Zoom meeting, or if you have any questions, we can get them answered. All right, thank you.